Hi, and welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. Lynn Megalazar is supposed to give the welcome. Lynn, are you there? Okay, for some reason we're having some audio issues. Roseanne?
Sure. Hi. This is Roseanne Selfon, your WRJ Centennial Chair. I hope that the technical end is working and you can hear me. Welcome to this wonderful WRJ Artifact webinar. There are many, many people signed up to hear this tonight. It will be recorded. But most of all, we want to thank you for your participation and get you as excited as we are to celebrate our centennial. Thank you. Marla?
Good evening, everyone. This is Marla Feldman. I haven't met all of you, but hopefully I will in the coming months meet many of you at some of our upcoming district conventions. I'm the still relatively new executive director of WRJ. And I wanted to take a moment this evening to reflect and remember and recognize the 11th anniversary of 9/11, even in the midst of our celebratory Centennial and the webinar, which will really help us launch and think about our history. It's important to remember this moment in time for our community. During the month of Elul, which we're in right now, and through Sukkot, it's traditional for the Jewish community to read Psalm 27. And I found a lot of inspiration in the psalm, which appropriately evokes confidence in God's protection despite acknowledging the many risks that ensue in our fragile lives. The psalmist who wrote Psalm 27 looks to God to be our shelter and our security in times when we're feeling vulnerable, times of threat and times of war. Psalm 27 is an affirmation that even when we are beset by evil, our faith can make us stronger and can be the source of courage in difficult times. So I'll share with you a few excerpts from Psalm 27, and I hope we'll find inspiration in it as we commemorate this anniversary. Adonai is my light and my help. Whom should I fear? Adonai is the strength of my life. Who can make me afraid? When evildoers draw near to devour my flesh, it is they, these foes and enemies, who will stumble and fall. Even if an army rises up against me, my heart will have no fear. Even if war besets me, I will feel secure. O God, shelter me within a sukkah when evil strikes. Protect me in the secret shelter of your tent. Raise me up safely upon a rock. Adonai, Shema, hear my voice when I call. Have mercy on me and answer my plea. You seek my heart, and my heart seeks you. I seek your presence. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn me away. You have always been my help, so do not abandon me now. Do not forsake me, my God, my deliverer. Teach me your ways, Adonai. Guide me on a straight and level path because of my watchful enemies. Look to Adonai. Be strong inside, and let your heart be brave. Yes, yes, look to Adonai. Be strong and of good courage. Amen. Rachel?
Thank you, Marla. Yes, thank you, Marla. Again, my name is Rachel Juris, and I'm the manager of service to sisterhoods and districts at Women of Reformed Judaism. And I'm just going to review a few slides, some how-to items for tonight's webinar. So let's review a few of the guidelines for the optimal webinar attendee experience. This webinar broadcast this evening has begun with all attendees in listen-only mode. On the next couple of slides, we'll explain how to use your webinar control panel. This is an example of a control panel, which you should see. If this panel is getting in your way at any point during tonight's webinar, you can minimize it by clicking on the arrows on the upper left-hand corner of your control panel. And to open it again, just click on the arrows once more. Because we're expecting a lot of people on tonight's webinar, we will not be using the raised hand function to ask questions aloud. So instead, if you have a question at any point during tonight's webinar, be it technical or content related, please type in your question into the questions log, which you'll see in your control panel, and we will answer all content questions during our Q&A session. And if you're having a technical problem, you can also type into the questions log, and we will do our best to assist you. Audio controls. You have the option of using one of two audio modes during tonight's webinar, either your telephone or mic and speakers. Be sure when using the telephone component to enter your audio pin, which is displayed in the audio pane. And this is, again, an example of a control panel, and please note that the numbers in this panel are simply an example. If you are encountering any issues with your webinar experience tonight, any technical issues, please type your questions into the questions log, and again, we'll do our best to assist you. Thank you for your attention and patience. Now let's begin our presentation, and I'm going to turn it back over to Roseanne Selfon.
Lynn, are you there? Lynn Lazar? Well, I assure you she's there. She's just having some difficulties. Lynn, if you are hearing this at any time, please just jump in and we'll be able to hear your voice. For those of you who don't know, Lynn had a very exciting weekend. Her daughter Jessica was married, so this is her first back to reality in the real world. But again, welcome to this webinar. Our WRJ Centennial celebrates achievements and accomplishments by thousands of women over the past 100 years, women who made living Jewish lives for themselves and their families a priority. And this centennial sets the stage for our future and all that we will continue to do and newly create as our world changes. Speaking of changing, can you imagine the world back in 1913? How different. Our women have come through so many distinct time periods in these past 100 years, starting with an immigrant generation, times of great expansion and growth, times of depression, too many wars to name, American civil rights, the founding of the State of Israel, Soviet Jewry, space travel, very, very unfortunate assassinations. And just as we thought a few minutes ago, as we recalled in our prayer, 9/11. And on until today, when we're in the midst of a digital age. So how do we mark unique milestones such as this 100th birthday? For all of WRJ, several years of thoughtful planning will come to fruition in 2013. The Centennial Executive Committee, numbering approximately 25 women from all around North America, has been working since 2010 to offer programs, projects, publications, special events, and experiences like tonight, which is a very special offering of an artifact webinar. Indeed, we're in this amazing digital world. Our most dedicated ally in this 100th celebration continues to be the American Jewish Archives, fondly called the AJA, located on the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion, Cincinnati campus. The AJA is not a museum. There aren't rooms where you go to see old pottery. Rather, it holds the true keys to the development of Jewish life in America, housing millions of documents, photos, records, recordings, and such that tell the story of our many communities and life since Jews arrived in the United States over 300 years ago. Tonight, we are privileged to be studying with Dr. Sam Joseph, the Eleanor Seinsheimer Distinguished Service Professor of Jewish Education and Leadership Development. Sam is a longtime WRJ friend and colleague. My first interaction with Sam took place when we were planning the 1993 assembly in San Francisco. WRJ, actually we were still in FTS then, we asked Sam to design a workshop to begin the assembly, focusing on intimate small groups that would create small connected communities within our larger delegate body. It was Sam who gave us the marvelous icebreaker that so many of you have used yourselves as leaders or participated in. I'll give you an idea. It's about look in your pocketbook, what is Jewish? Does that ring any bells? A bit about our teacher, Dr. Joseph, who grew up in Philadelphia, was ordained at HUC in 1976. While serving as an assistant rabbi in Dayton, Ohio, he also obtained a PhD in education and behavioral organization. And then he returned to join the faculty at HUC in Cincinnati in 1981. Married for 40 years, he has 2 fabulous daughters. Rachel, who was just ordained this past May, is an assistant rabbi in Portland, Oregon, currently preparing for her first high holidays. And Bethany, who is a doctor of audiology at Boys Town Research Hospital in Omaha, Nebraska. However, have to be honest, the light of his eyes these days is Rachel's adorable son, Max, who is 16 months old. Tonight, Sam will teach all of us about artifacts. What is an artifact or what isn't an artifact? What import does it have on history? What can it tell future researchers who are looking at our times? And most importantly, what is acceptable for us to share from our local sisterhoods? The AJA, the American Jewish Archives, wants to add all of our documents, oral histories, records, menus, invitations, Shabbat services, installations, photos, and so forth, to all the wonderful materials it already has in the WRJ collection. In fact, the great news tonight is that you can select as many artifacts, document types, as you wish and share them with the AJA. But more about that later. Sam, I'm so pleased to turn this webinar over to you. Next.
Thank you very, very much, Roseanne. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm so thrilled and honored to be, again, with the Women in Reform Judaism, and I really look forward to collaborating and partnering with all of you to make this Centennial just the most amazing event it could possibly be, not just for the Women in Reform Judaism, but for the Reform movement and really for the Jewish community all through North America, if not beyond our borders. Tonight, we're going to quickly go through a number of things, like, as Roseanne said, what are artifacts, how to think about the artifacts, why they're important, and on those pieces and some examples. At the end, you'll hear from others on how to connect this to the archives and to the Centennial. So as you see in the first slide, we have the question, what are artifacts? Now, the simplest definition is there. It's probably pretty self-evident. Artifacts are things that are formed by humans, and because of that, they are of interest today. Actually, there's many, many people that are looking in all different places all over the world for artifacts. If you look on eBay, you'll see that there are literally tens of thousands of artifacts for sale. And so we're going to go through so you have a closer idea of what this is all about. Go to the next frame, please. Take a moment to look at these photos. I just love them. I have to tell you, it is not pictures from my bar mitzvah, so probably I have photos similar to this. I think it's the same vintage. These are actually photos from the 1960s. Just take a look. Let's look for a moment on the left and some of the things that we notice. Of course, we can see the bar mitzvah boy in his tuxedo. I don't know if that's his first tuxedo, but there he is, all smiles, all just spit and polished. Looks like a dance floor. Looks like some dinner or luncheon. People are seated. Look at mom. Look at the dress, 1960s vintage. I'm sure everybody is taking a look at that hairdo and thinking about whether that'll make a comeback someday. I wonder how long it took mom to get that hair put in that, that style. Look to the right. I'm sure everybody recognizes that that's probably the ubiquitous candle lighting ceremony. I'd love to actually never really did a study to see how old that is, but certainly I know these photos are from the very early 1960s, so I don't know actually when the candle lighting ceremony began. I'm assuming, though I don't really know, that the two people with our bar mitzvah boy are his grandparents. We don't know that. If not, they're probably very close friends and relatives, also quite formally dressed. And we see a cake. So it gives you an idea as we look at this. I mean, this gives us literally a vision and a moment in time that was happening 50 years ago of a bar mitzvah, and we know it's in the United States. Next slide. Next frame. So here again we have some different pictures. We have two related to the Boy Scouts, and we have one representation related to the Girl Scouts. The one on the left is a very, very famous painting by Norman Rockwell. It shows a Boy Scout. This was done in the 1940s. It shows a boy. Again, take a look at the hairstyle. Look how straight and tall he is standing. Behind him is the pledge that the Boy Scouts make, and he's holding his hand in the sign for the Boy Scouts. We could look at his uniform. People that know could tell what rank he is by the badge on his left breast pocket. On his belt, there's either a knife or some other gadget that's hanging. So there, we see a lot right there. And then we look to the right, and we have actually a photograph. This photograph comes from, excuse me, from the late 60s, early 70s. The uniforms look differently. The boys here are now wearing a sash with badges that are merit badges. I know the Girl Scouts had a similar tradition of that. They have other things around their necks, etc. I mean, it really shows us, you can look at their hairstyles and change in time. And then we have a very modern representation of the logo and the branding of the Girl Scouts. I believe that the color, that green and that white, is part of the brand of the Girl Scouts of America. And it's interesting if you look at this photograph, and excuse me, if you look at the representation of the female face, you have sort of the positive, like a photograph, a positive and a negative. I don't mean plus and minus in the sense of good or bad, but you see sort of the white light, and then you have a darker green on the other side. It could relate to diversity, etc. So it's really a powerful symbol. And these are artifacts that you could look at and begin to try to think about what's going on and what does this tell us and what does this mean. Next frame, please. So now we're going to go back in time, and we're actually looking at an artifact that is quite famous in American Jewish history. This is the front and the inside of the menu from the very famous banquet that happened in July of 1883 that we call the Treifa banquet. Treif obviously being the term that we use for food that is non-kosher. And what happened was that our founder, Isaac Mayer Wise, brought many, many dignitaries in July of 1883 to come to Cincinnati and to celebrate the first ordinations that were happening in America, that were coming out of the Hebrew Union College at that time. And there was a big banquet that was set. Parenthetically, Wise, as he's forming the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, and you can see their name prominently, he was hoping that it really would be a union of American Hebrew Congregations. There's no word reform in that language. But if you take, and I know it may be hard to see on the frame, so on your computer, so I'll give you an idea of what was on the menu. The very first thing on the menu is little neck clams on the half shell. A little later, that's going to be followed by a salad of shrimps. If you go to the right-hand side, the bottom of it, there is trying to take a quick look here. I think we're okay on the asparagus and other things, but already the sins had been committed from the shrimp and the clams on a half shell. And I know beef is served on the entree, and there was no concern of whether they were mixing milk and meat. There is, in history, parenthetically, nobody is sure about whether Rabbi Wise actually knew this was going to happen and whether he planned for it to happen. Our friend and colleague, Rabbi Lance Sussman, who's the senior rabbi at Knesset Israel in Philadelphia and a wonderful historian, has done a lot of writing and research on this. If you want to read more, you can actually Google the Treifa banquet and find more about it. But this is an amazing artifact, and some people believe that conservative Judaism and maybe even strong Orthodoxy really started in America because of this. Lance would say that's a myth, but this is a very powerful artifact. And some of you may have heard of the Treifa banquet. My guess is few have actually ever seen what the actual menu and program looks like. Next frame, please. This is a very somber and sobering artifact. This is a telegram from August of 1942. This telegram is considered the first telegram to the West that actually says that the Nazis are going to murder millions of Jews. And I'll read part of it to you, starting at the top, about 5 lines down. I've received through the Foreign Office following message from Regner in Geneva. Stop. I received alarming report that in the Führer's headquarters, planned, discussed, and under consideration, all Jews in countries occupied or controlled Germany, number 3.5 to 4 million, should, after deportation and concentration in East, at one blow exterminated to resolve once for all the Jewish question in Europe. I'm down to the bottom. Stop. Action reported planned for autumn. Methods discussion include prussic acid. Stop. We transmit information with all necessary reservation as exactitude cannot be confirmed. Stop. Informant stated to have close connections with highest German authorities, and his reports generally reliable. There's, again, a lot of history to this. The archives is the repository of all the records, the millions of documents of the World Jewish Congress, so there's many parts of this, but this is, as you can imagine, really a very, very powerful, as I said, artifact that we have that gives us a glimpse into the past, into our history, albeit a very painful time. Next frame, please. So let me spend just a few minutes with you, being the academic I am, and just give you some more thinking about artifacts and archaeological artifacts. So if you're in archaeology, there may be even people on this webinar who have been in an archaeological dig, whether it's been in Israel or some other place in the world, and you're looking to dig up artifacts. I mean, many, many years ago, in fact, early in our lives, it may even be before Dory and I were married, we were on a dig in Israel, and one of the artifacts that she did very excitedly was come upon a stone wall. We were digging near Gezer, as some of you know, and looking for all kinds of things. But in archaeology, an artifact is something that's made or given shape by humans, a tool or a work of art, especially an object that archaeologists find of interest, right, that there's something there that they can read. It's usually recovered during this digging effort. If you've ever done this, it's done very carefully and scientifically, and they make these cuts into the area. If it's in the Middle East, they call it a tell, the hill, and they do it very carefully by meters, etc. Examples are stone tools, metal objects, maybe things that people wore on their bodies, adornment, bones that show human modification, fire, cracked rocks that could be from a hearth, maybe plant materials used for food. I started a hobby many years ago of buying a piece of archaeology in Israel every trip that we make. It's much harder today. Some of that's good. It's because the laws have gotten stricter, and also it's more people are careful about buying things that are fake. But I have a nice collection of pots and lamps, some things made out of glass. I even bought over the years, a couple idols that go back 3,000 years ago. So these are archaeological artifacts. Next frame. So people that are anthropologists and some sociologists, they're interested in what they call cultural artifacts. So this is a term that's used in the social sciences for anything that's created by humans. It gives us information about the culture of the person who created it and the culture of those people that used it. Now that also can encompass archaeological sites, and I want to say that archaeological and cultural artifacts center, the definitions overlap. It's like a Venn diagram. These objects can be modern or they can be near modern. So it could be a 17th century lathe. It could be a piece of faience, which is a finely glazed piece of pottery. It could even be a television, and some of you, again, on the webinar may enjoy looking at this. Does it remind some of you of one of the early televisions somebody in your family may have owned? It may not have been that color, but sort of looked like that. And many of you may collect and own some things that are cultural artifacts. I own a Howdy Doody drinking glass. I have some newspapers that I like to keep, like Nixon Resigned, that type of thing. Some of you may have original pair of Mickey Mouse ears from the Mouseketeers. Lots of people, especially the baby boomers, are very big in collecting cultural artifacts that go back to their childhood. There's lots of stuff out there related to people's hometowns and things they did as children and as teenagers. Next frame. So finally, there is this whole thing that people call social artifacts. While the cultural artifacts may be more anthropology, social artifacts are more sociology, these disciplines themselves overlap. But any product of individuals or groups or of their social behavior that happened, objects that were designed and used by the people to meet recurring needs or solve problems. I'll come back to that. An example could be a document. And I want to give you an example related to the second bullet point. Robert's Rules of Order is a great example of a social artifact. Roberts, who was a graduate of West Point after the Civil War and was sent out to the West by the government to run these army forts. Little towns grew up around these forts, and he was asked to chair meetings. And when he retired from the military, he said he went out of his mind trying to come up with the rules to chair these meetings. So he invented Robert's Rules of Order, and the family still owns the rights to Robert's Rules. It is a social artifact. Roberts designed it and used it to solve a problem. But there's other types. For example, you'll see a primary artifact like a digital camera is an artifact. A corkscrew. People, by the way, collect corkscrews. Again, look on eBay. You can get them that are 1,000 years old, and you can get modern ones. A secondary artifact could be the manual on how to use the digital camera. It also could be an artifact on how to use a corkscrew. The thing about social artifacts is they actually don't have to have a physical form. You could say, for example, I frequently visit a synagogue, and before services, the rabbi will say to me, you should know tonight, Friday night, we're the kissing congregation, Sam, which says to me that when, at the end of services, when the rabbi says, Good Shabbos, I'm going to hear, as everybody turns to kiss each other. That is a social artifact and doesn't necessarily have a physical form. It doesn't have to have a historical value either. In other words, graffiti on a public wall doesn't necessarily have to have historical value. It could be from now. Or finding something in a garbage dump doesn't have to have historical value right now. Okay, so I've given you sort of this overview of all the people that are interested in what are something that were formed by humans and may be of interest today. Next frame. So this all relates to this idea of culture. I'm only going to spend a moment here. We're all in cultures. Your particular own sisterhood has its culture, just as that is embedded, and it's embedded in the culture of your congregation and of your community, just as all of us are embedded in the larger culture of Reform Judaism in America through history. But the culture are these patterns of assumptions. You assume, something. When you hear women in Reform Judaism, you hear the term sisterhood, there's a whole bunch of assumptions. These assumptions are invented or discovered or developed as the group learns to cope with problems. Understand problems as challenges. More than 100 years ago, women in the reform movement got together and said, we have a challenge. We want to be involved in a very leadership way and a powerful way in the reform movement in our congregations. And how are we going to do that? So as they created and invented and developed ways to do that, and then I'm continuing the definition, and those inventions, discoveries, and developments worked well enough to be considered valid, they then taught new members that this is the way you're supposed to act. This is the way you're supposed to think. This is the way you're supposed to feel. So all of us have all these patterns of inventions and discoveries and developments and programs that we just keep passing on because they work. And that's what forms our culture. And especially in thinking about Women Reformed Judaism right now in local sisterhoods. Next frame. So our artifacts are very, very important. Look at these wonderful historical photographs from the history of what we today call the Women Reformed Judaism. Again, looking at the clothing, looking at the hairstyle, look at the hats. I'm surprised, actually, in these pictures, nobody has a veil, but you could find some sort of a veil off the hat. And then yet there's one obviously more modern from some sort of a demonstration where you hear somebody's holding a banner of the Women of Reformed Judaism. Here on the bottom right, you see Social Justice Project. It's wonderful as you begin to think about these people and what they represent about the culture and what's important in the culture. Next frame. Here's other artifacts. Take a moment to scan those, the very famous union grams. A piece of music called Sisterhood, Song of Welcome. Can you imagine that somebody had this commissioned, somebody sang it? I wonder if they did it at opening events of that Sisterhood, whether it was used at national meetings of Sisterhood. At the top, there's a brochure, again, helping for social justice and on the right humanitarian causes. These are all give us insights. These were created by humans. They're of interest today because they give us an insight into what was important, what was valuable, what is it in the culture that we really want people to know about today. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over in one moment back to other members of the panel like Roseanne. But as I conclude, I just want to say that as you think about your artifacts, and you'll hear from other people on this webinar more literally what you can send and keep and collect, be thinking about what, as you choose these things, as you look through your archives, as you talk to people, think about what represents our values. What is it, if we put it out there, we want people to see what was important to us? Something we think is special that gives us an insight and a glimpse into things that were very ideal for us as we look back in history. Be selective. Choose some things that you think really, really, in a powerful way to you, are something that you'd like other people to see and to learn about. One last thing, Roseanne, before I turn it over to you. It's not a document as an artifact, but I actually work every day in an office that's on the 4th floor on the Cincinnati campus in a building that's called the Sisterhood Dormitory. This building was built with money from the Women in Reformed Judaism, the Sisterhoods, many years ago, many decades ago. I like to think that the word sisterhood is actually used the most in the world related to the Women in Reformed Judaism on my campus, because hundreds and hundreds of times a day, people are saying, I'll meet you in the Sisterhood dorm. I'll see you in the Sisterhood dorm. Can I have an appointment with you? Are you in your office in the Sisterhood dorm? So that's an amazing artifact and a powerful, valuable symbol, the Women in Reformed Judaism. Thank you, Roseanne.
And thank you, Sam. As a matter of fact, when you all come to the Free Leadership Conference in January in Cincinnati, you will see the Sisterhood dorm. Some of us have stayed there, and many of us have spent time there, whether we were doing research or if someone was a student on the campus or a visitor. So talk about artifacts. That's Kanahora, a very, very big and powerful one. And again, Sam, thank you so much. So first things first. let's get organized. It's something we women do actually very well. The first thing to do is to select an artifact. Please don't select this in a vacuum, but with as many women as possible. It's a great way to reach out to women who perhaps don't come to current meetings, that might have documents tucked in some file in their room, might have great photos. In fact, have an artifact party. Gather women to review this webinar, which will be available to you, and then to carefully see what your sisterhood has and what you would consider sending. Indeed, what Sam said, this is supposed to reflect the values and ideals of your sisterhood. Original documents and photos are best, but you can have someone scan and then email the pieces to the archives. Currently, the AJA houses records from WRJ. Literally, since it was founded as NFTS, there are actually records in the archives that predate the founding of NFTS, when we were ladies' aid societies and such. What's in the archives from WRJ? There are board minutes, program books, uniongrams, photos. Some are labeled, some aren't. We need to label things with dates and names nobody will remember, and letters. There are district records and documents. Uniongrams are there. In fact, I have to tell you, the holiday card from the archives this year features a uniongram from 1928, and it talks about our Centennial. It's just fabulous. Some of your sisterhoods probably have records that are at the archives. You'll be very surprised to find out there's a listing of the sisterhood collection online. But now is the perfect moment for us to help the AJA expand its collection, this repository that tells the whole story of women, and particularly women in congregational life, and that's what we're about. So select that artifact, and as I told you at the beginning, it's not relegated to just one photo or one document or one artifact, as we're calling them. You can have all kinds of things. Let me give you some other suggestions. There are subject files. You know how we always say that you should pass on your records to the next chair or the next officer? Well, if in fact you really did that, that's a great piece. Your membership records that might even have life cycle events in it. Annual reports, if you do them. You could have reports about fundraising activities and initiatives, but not the actual ledgers or business records. Publications, programs. If you do an online newsletter, this is the perfect time to maybe print it out and include it along with previous letters that were only done by snail mail. And photographs and media, both interior and exterior photographs. AV material, if you've done oral histories, this is a wonderful time to share those as well. And again, try to date everything. After the seminar tonight, later this week or next week, depending on Rachel's schedule, you will be able to go online and find the documents that you need in order to submit your artifacts. The submission document asks you, I think, maybe 5 questions. You are going to complete that. It will be able to be downloaded from the internet, and you can email it back. As you can see on the slide, it goes to, it's actually Kevin Prophet, who is the senior archivist at the American Jewish Archive. So you can email right back to him your submission form. You can fax it, or you can use the United States Postal Service and put it in the snail mail. After that is received at the AJA, you will be contacted either by email or a phone call from one of the archivists who works with Kevin. And they will answer any of your questions. respond to you if there's something that isn't appropriate for sending, or if they're looking for something additional, and they will also tell you how to send what you need to send and provide you with shipping details. When you get the okay from the archives, you will then ship your item and make sure you include a submission form. Now, looking at dates, we are going to have an exhibition of NFTS WRJ materials in January at the Leadership Conference in Cincinnati. If you can complete this entire process, you will be able to get that in there by December 15th. Then it could be that one of your pieces might be in the exhibit for the Leadership Conference. So again, that's that deadline, December 15th, for the January conference. Materials that are received after that deadline will be considered for the large exhibit that will be shown in December 2013 in San Diego at our Centennial Assembly. Next slide. Let's remember what our mission is. We want to share something that tells about our lives and our communities. It should tell your sisterhood story. Records relating to the establishment of your sisterhood, whether you're 100 years old, you could be 120 years old, or you could be 1 year old. We'd like to know how it came to be. Subject files of officers and administrators, membership records, annual or committee reports, selected project files like your terrific fundraising, Temple Israel, Sisterhood in Minneapolis does the most immense garage sale every year. It would be awesome to know how they do it and how they built it up. That kind of information is very important. Publications, programs, PR materials, photographs, and again, please try to label them. And if you don't know all the people and you can't find out who they are in the photograph, at least try to find or ascertain a date. I'd also like to just remind you that oral histories on a CD-ROM would be wonderfully accepted. They are actually best when they have a transcriptions. And again, this Centennial might give you an opportunity to do some of those oral histories with women in your sisterhoods who are aging. And I can tell you, don't put it off, because we never know what's coming tomorrow. So think of it this way. If you were researching the late 20th century and the early years of the 21st century, what would you like to learn, to see, to have that aha moment about how did they live their lives? What did they do? What was important to them? When you first saw that Treifa banquet menu, it was entertaining, to say the least. But then when you dig to the next level and you pursue the reasons why perhaps that food was served and what impact it had, what was the generative motivation, this is truly telling the story of our times. Next. Items that will not be considered. I love that hand up there. I think I would have written it the other way. I would have been backwards. Large artifacts. So they're not looking for your pottery. They are not looking for your tea service. This is not a museum, which is something we all need to remember. Business records. We don't want to see your treasurer's report from every month. Day-to-day records that are not historically valuable. So you had that meeting and there was a whole huckmas going on and it was recorded in the minutes, and we don't need to know all those kinds of details. It needs to be historically valuable. Next. What's this all about? What a fabulous poster. As you're doing your artifact research into materials and treasurable mementos, think about hosting your own local display during 2013. Okay, maybe you're going to haul out that silver and polish it that nobody ever uses anymore. Do you have tablecloths that were special? My sisterhood has a tablecloth, and then we paid to have names embroidered on it. And it was so long ago that I was actually Mrs. David Selfon. I didn't have a first name, obviously. Show copies of old documents. Who doesn't like to see history? Ask people to contribute, to bring in their photographs. It's a perfect time to display your sisterhood's history and to excel telling your story. You might even consider hosting that exhibit as part of the Centennial Shabbat whenever you schedule that. You could have women serve as docents and tell some fun or interesting stories to your religious school children. Take advantage of this WRJ Centennial celebration to honor your sisterhood and tell your congregation family all about what you've done to enhance Jewish life and communal life in your area. So what's this poster? The Archives is creating fabulous posters, I believe anywhere from 6 to 8, that will focus on different aspects of WRJ life. They would make a terrific background for a local exhibit. The finishing touches aren't on these. I can tell you there's this one about beginnings. I know the second one is about uniograms. I'm not sure about the rest. But as soon as all the details are designed about these and how to obtain them, you will get an alert online, particularly if you're an ambassador or a sisterhood president. Next. So do you have a question? If you have questions about any part of this project, please contact Rachel, our webinar guru, who is endlessly becoming so adept at hosting these webinars for WRJ. She is the manager of service to sisterhoods and districts. You can see that her email is there, or you can still pick up the phone and actually talk to Rachel. If you have questions, we hope that you've written them in. Next frame.
Okay. Thank you, Roseanne.
You're welcome.
So Marla just mentioned to me about those posters that are going to be available that we hope to have sets available before January. So for anyone that's interested, again, we hope to have those available before the beginning of 2013. So keep your eyes posted. Okay, so we've now reached the Q&A portion of tonight's webinar. If you have a question still burning in your brain from either Sam's presentation or Roseanne's presentation, please type in your question into the questions log, and we will do our best to answer you. If we don't get the ability to answer every question tonight, don't worry. The webinar has the capability of having a questions log saved, so we will follow up with you after tonight's webinar. Okay, so I have some questions that I'm going to share with our panelists. Okay, Risa Davids wrote in a question. Risa works with our Sisterhoods in Israel. Her question is, WRJ Israel started only 3+ years ago. Would something so current be an artifact, such as pictures or a mission statement from them?
Yes, absolutely. Again, it doesn't, I mean, history is all relative, and these are some of the founding documents. I mean, what's good about something that's fairly new is that we know a lot about that material. So I would suggest, Teresa, that let alone you send that in, that any commentary that you have, you probably were there or involved in writing and the founding of these documents. So that's also very important with the artifact.
Great. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Risa. Okay, another question comes from Paula Zalanka. She asks, Do we send originals or copies of our items? Our temple has its own archives and may want to keep the originals.
I think this is one that I take, Paula. We are happy to have the originals. However, we understand that temples like yours in Tampa are so lucky to have an ongoing archive in it. So in that case, if the document, the photo, whatever it is, could be scanned and emailed, that would be a first choice. A second choice would be to have it copied and mailed. But we will be thrilled to have it as part of the submission of your documents, however you think we can include it.
Great. Thank you. Okay, the next question comes from Marcia Garnice. I hope I pronounced your last name right. She asked, is there a certain way to send the artifacts, certified or regular mail?
Again, when you talk to the archivist, whether it's by email or phone, and they respond to your submission form, then they will tell you exactly how to send what you're sending. That's their territory, and they're very specific about it, so they will let you know exactly what to do.
Great. Okay, next question is from Betsy Brody. She said, prior to moving to Florida, she was an active member of a Long Island, New York Sisterhood, which is no longer affiliated with WRJ. Would you want anything from that sisterhood?
I think that any part of sisterhood life is really valuable, Betsy, and particularly the sisterhood was part of WRJ at one time, so let's get it in there. If you have some great pictures and documents, let's make sure that it's part of this repository.
Yeah, in fact, I would add that it's even more important, since it doesn't exist anymore, that it has a home for these documents, so that because it did exist and people did give up their resources to make it a success when it lived. So it definitely should be in the archives.
Yeah. Many small sisterhoods, particularly in the South, are dwindling or have seen the end of their duration. And if anyone has information and documents and photos of those sisterhoods, much like Sam just said, please share them with us.
Okay, great. The questions keep coming. Okay, Sheila Firestone posted a question. She said, we created Miriam's cups and tambourines for our women's seders. Would this be appropriate to send in?
I think that they would rather not have anything bulky like that. The archives does have things like, remember when we wore ribbons hanging on our ID cards at assemblies? They do have ribbons. They have buttons, like go to the next assembly, wherever it is kind of button. But things that are really three-dimensional, they don't have a place to store them, literally.
Yeah, but Roseanne's 100% correct, excuse me. But definitely, if you can get some very good photographs of that material, it would be terrific. Again, and also identify with the photographs, who made them, when they were made, why they were made, that kind of thing. But close photographs. A photograph that's a distance of the creators, 5 people standing holding what they made in their hand could be one of many you send, but most important would be close up, because that then will give, when that's studied years and years from now, it will say something about this day and age.
Yeah. Let me give you a couple more examples. Thinking about the women's seders that are so popular now, some of our sisterhoods have started those and they've been going for years, and you've embellished them. So telling the story about sisterhood celebrating is terrific.
Great. Thank you. Okay. I have another question here from Janet Katz. She said, would you prefer to have the information in Word files or printed?
Again, that's a question that you can ask the archivist when you speak with them and when you fill out your submission form. Sam, can you add anything to that?
No, I do think that Kevin Prophet and the people that are the archivists will be very helpful on answering that question of what's best for them. And they'll be very, very responsive to you.
Okay, great. Okay, and I have a couple of people, and I can actually answer this question, who asked if copies of these slides and where the submission form will be located. As Roseanne mentioned earlier, we do plan to, hopefully as soon as we can, put up on the Centennial website all the stuff for tonight's webinar. There'll be a copy of this PowerPoint, a link to the actual recording if you want to watch the webinar again or share it with others. There will also be a copy of the submission form, which you can download and again send in to the AJA. And then also, I don't remember if Roseanne mentioned earlier, there will also be a form that kind of summarizes like what to send, what not to send, and gives a lot of the details that were in these slides in the presentation tonight, and it's kind of all on one page, a summary. So hopefully that will be helpful to everybody. So we are going to try to get that up as soon as possible, and all of you will be notified when it goes up. And in the meantime, we will also email everybody all that information. Okay, I see another question from Sheila Firestone, and I think it is an important one to ask. She said, is there a limit on the number of submissions?
No, the good news is that originally we thought everybody could send one artifact. And in our conversation last week in preparing for this webinar, they said there's no limit. We'd like to have as many documents and as many pictures and as many great reports as possible. The caveat is to make sure it's meaningful and important and that it tells a story and tells the story of your values, as Sam mentioned.
Great. And someone also just asked about the Centennial website, what the URL is for that. If you just go to www.wrj.org, in the center of the screen there's like a green bar, and it says it mentions the Centennial, and if you click on that, it brings you to the Centennial website. So again, thank you everybody for your questions. If we didn't get to your question, we will follow up with you after tonight's webinar, so please, we have a few minutes left. Please type in any unanswered questions, and we'll be happy to assist you. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Roseanne, who has a couple of announcements about other Centennial programs.
There's so much that's coming up about the Centennial. Let me go over a couple of things, giving you a couple of details. Building a movement is literally telling about our story in terms of dollars and cents and statistics. Not too long ago, actually, Rachel sent out an email to all Sisterhood presidents asking them to consult with their treasurers to give us a sense of how a Sisterhood financially supports things that are going on at the temple and the community, because for some people, money talks, and we'd love to have a collective figure that says what are Sisterhoods and what WRJ has supported the reform movement. So that's why this is called Building a Movement, and where there's Torah, you need some bread, so this is our bread, and let's tell our story. Unsung Heroines, this fall, you will shortly see this on the Centennial website. We'd like you to nominate one woman with her picture and a short bio of why she's being nominated to be your WRJ Centennial Unsung Heroine. She's not supposed to be somebody who is a microphone. She's supposed to be somebody who's always there for Sisterhood. We know we're going to see all of you at the Free Leadership Conference in Cincinnati in January. The Centennial Shabbat services, whether they're Friday night, Saturday morning, or Havdalah, will be posted much later this fall, but certainly far enough in time that you will be able to download them. So please make sure that celebrating this centennial on Shabbat, and if it can't be that weekend in March, find another Shabbat and use the services. They are absolutely fabulous. And there's still room for anyone to join us on the trip to Israel and Berlin, actually right after that Centennial Shabbat weekend. The trip is March 5th to 17th, 2013, and it will, again, there's a flyer on the website in the Centennial section that tells you about the trip. Next. Lynn, are you there? Can you talk?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wow. Thank you, Rachel, for resolving the problem. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you. A special thank you to Rachel for orchestrating this and being our go-to gal on just about everything. Thank you, Dr. Joseph. We are very, very blessed to have learned with you this evening. Thank you very much. And I will reiterate what Roseanne said, that those of you who will be attending the Freed Leadership Conference in Cincinnati, you just saw the dates, January 25th to the 27th. You all will have the opportunity to meet Sam, and that will be very exciting, along with lots of other exciting teachers and dignitaries who are going to be at our kickoff leadership conference in January. Roseanne, thank you very much. It's been a really, really interesting webinar, and I personally look forward to seeing the results of all the things that we've learned tonight and exactly what kind of artifacts come to the American Jewish Archives. I thank you all. I'm glad that my problems got resolved here so that I could say something, because I really am very excited about our whole entire centennial year and this piece of adding to our history. When we started planning for the WRJ Centennial, literally thinking about it years ago and all the way through until this very moment, a lot of the research and a lot of the help has come from the American Jewish Archives. And when you realize what our foremothers left for us, there's a huge amount of information there. And I hope that 100 years from now, or even 50 years from now, when people are looking to see what kind of legacy we have left, that this will just be a huge part of what the archives has to offer. So I'm very excited about this piece of it, and I'm excited to go forward into our planning and to launch our centennial year. And I thank all of you again for the time that you've devoted to everything you've done in Sisterhood right so far for our centennial and for being part of this webinar this evening. And I wish you Shana Tova, a very happy, healthy new year, and thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Night.